I started this year with a mission to finish all the comic project ideas that I have been gathering in my to-do list and that are still missing the end on the last panel.
Hi, I'm Juana, and I draw Porchi. What projects have been gathering on your desk? Want to join me? We could all use a bit of cheering on to make it to the finish line. And to make things easier, I picked the shortest comic story that has been gathering dust on my desk for some months. I challenged myself to make a one-page story based on this Porky drawing. It's called Hercule Poirot, the Great Detective. The same day I came up with the idea, I managed to outline the story, the panel structure, and I even made draft sketches for all the panels. After all, it was a very simple short story. But then I stopped, and the next day I got to do other stuff. No more of this thing. Leaving projects unfinished is no fun. So, let's get started. Once again. I made this Porky drawing during Inktober last year for the first prompt, Moustache. Porky loves playing detective, so when thinking of famous characters with moustaches, of course a certain detective came to mind. I didn't spend much time thinking this story over. It is something simple and it rather popped into my head. But looking now at what I did, I see that intuitively I used some rules in constructing it. First, it has symmetry. I mean, the story starts in the place it ends. Same angle, the door to the detective office. When I tried to fit the door into the comic panel, I saw that I could use the door itself as the panel. This was both easier to do, and maybe it looks more interesting. The first panel of a story is an introduction to the story setting, and usually a larger scene is used for this. But this door gives enough information, and it can lead the reader into the story very well. Seasoned mystery movie lovers will also detect the cliché I used, the detective office door from the film noir genre, for instance, Raymond Chandler movie adaptations. I should have tried different inking styles to get that dramatic high contrast look, but to be able to finish quickly, I will just go ahead this way, with what liners I currently have at hand, and I will use hatching and a grey marker for values and shadows. And for this funny detail, Porky's shadow on the glass. My favorite detail on the whole page. I was not sure it will read well enough without a stronger contrast. Can you see Porky there picking up his hat? One thing you might have noticed is that I don't use a ruler to draw straight lines. I am not against rulers, but I don't like the way the perfect lines look besides my imperfect hand-drawn lines, and I can't make the two work together in a decent way. Actually, I am officially trained to use rulers, but now I'd rather work without one, to steady my hand more and improve my lines. And there we go, first panel ready. One of the reasons comics are so difficult to finish is the amount of repetitive work usually required in a story. Even when working digitally, you can't copy-paste much from one panel to the other without things looking boring. But many scenes will be similar, and the door to the detective's office will have to make a new appearance, in perspective even, as Porky goes out. Where to, Porky? The truth is, drawing comics requires a lot of work and patience, and in my opinion, trying to find too many shortcuts, especially digital ones, will make the result look cheap and lifeless. First ideas are lovely. The idea itself shines of a multitude of possibilities, and then for a while you are happy in the discovery and the vague impression of what it will lead you to. But making this idea real means you are taking it apart and add details, and these details need to work together. Each part creates new problems to be solved, and gradually the bright round idea you loved becomes an intricate spiky thing that looks totally different. Then you might get discouraged, you might even not like it anymore. With time and practice, I do hope to get faster, so when I find a new idea I like, the whole process gets shorter and easier. Okay, talking about practice and working faster is great, but let's think of some practical ways to be able to finish comic projects now, when we are kind of struggling. I made a list of 5 things that help me most, and I'm sure they can help you too in comics or any kind of creative project. So, if you have trouble finishing projects, you should try this. First, start small. 2. Have a very precise purpose. 3. Remember what is important. 4. Know the end before you start. And 5. Make a daily habit. I'll explain in more detail each of these points while we follow along Porchi's mysterious mission and my slow inking process made to appear super fast by the power of video speed increase. The first point is obvious, but often ignored. Take on things you can handle. Work on tiny bites. I'm drawing now a 1-page comic, but there also exists a 3 or 4 panel cartoon. That is also a comic story, and if you draw a few of them, you can put them together on a page. And if you have several 1-page stories, you can make a small collection. Other small project you can make is a zine. And zines are great not only because they are small, but they are also unpretentious. No one expects perfect art in a zine, quite the contrary. I made 2 of them, but I will tell you about them at the next stop. Let's hope I finish this 1-page story, otherwise this video would be totally disappointing. And my next comic waiting in line is a 4-page Porchi adventure. It is already outlined, but you guessed it, not finished. Let's get to the second point of my how to finish comics list. Find a precise purpose for the project you need to finish. This will give you a deadline and motivate you to commit to finishing the blasted thing, no matter what. You can find all kinds of purposes for your work. For instance, I once made a 2-page story as a card for our friend's wedding. It's crazy how quick I was with that one. I was coloring it with pencils in the car on the way to the venue. A fun comic on a birthday card can be a gift by itself. The first of the zines I made served me as an introduction card at an illustrators meeting. Not only I was motivated to finish it in time for the event, but having spent time preparing this gave me more courage to approach people I didn't know to give them the zine. That was a really fun day. For this Porchi story, the purpose actually is this video you're watching, because I'm trying to post videos once a week. Making a video about finishing comics to finish a comic worked well for the comic. I didn't get to post the video in time though. Well, there are many immediate purposes you can find for your comic. You can follow a challenge, participate in a contest, whatever feels interesting for you. And you don't have to win a prize. Your reward will be holding your finished project in your hands. Of course, your project can also have a digital output. If your comic lives online, you can still print it and display it somewhere near your desk, so you can look at it every day and be amazed at what you can do. Before getting to the next point on the list, let's see what is happening in Porchi's story. Instead of one large panel, I decided to divide this area in 3 smaller panels. I did it because I couldn't do it other way. I want to tell the reader that Porchi is taking a longer walk through the city streets to a mysterious destination. I could not have conveyed the idea of a long walk in just one panel, and several large panels with Porchi walking and nothing else happening would have been confusing to the reader, and would have required drawing too much useless detail, and the details would have spoiled the feeling of mystery. The small panels are more sketchy, easy to draw, and they do the job. I also did something else to make the journey seem longer. In each of the panels, Porchi's walking direction changes, thus making the reader imagine more winding streets in between the panels. Can you see that? Drawing the micro pig silhouettes was so fun. If I was drawing on my tablet, maybe I could not have avoided to zoom in and add more detail. This is one of the traps of digital work. Of course, each such moment in a comic story can be solved in more ways than one. Sometimes it's just a matter of what feels right at that time. Top of the page is ready. We are getting to the middle of the page, and Porky has reached his destination. It took me a bit to find a good name for the place Porky is visiting. Finally, I found this one. I am not very quick at finding names and putting words to my stories. As you see, this is a silent comic. Fortunately, this goes well with the black and white old mystery movie look. Getting word balloons into my stories is work in progress for me. I promise the next one will have a bit of dialogue. The tricky thing is that I have been drawing Porky for 10 years, and he's a silent type of pig. I can't make him talk now, just so I can have text bubbles in my comics. We'll have to find another solution. Third point on my how to finish comics list. Remember what's important. If you're a perfectionist and you find yourself nitpicking every detail, step back from time to time and remember or try to figure out what's the most interesting feature of your comic. What is that thing that made you want to draw it in the first place? Because that is the part you have to make sure you get right. And for the rest, work at the best of your ability, but don't worry so much. In my case, while I was losing time deciding the architectural details of the houses and the correct perspectives, what really mattered was Porky being a cute and funny character. Yes, you are. And the detective story reference. So these were the things I needed to get on the page. For instance, I'm not very pleased with the hatching I did so far, but I think it's not really important. I'll do better next time. To make real progress, I have to finish this project and get to the next one. So Porky came all the way here to get a mysterious box from this place called Enigma. What is this about? This panel is exactly in the middle of the page, so I used it like a pivot point. It stands out and should raise the reader's curiosity. What's in the Enigma box? This is a very simple story, but I think that treating it with care and getting the timing right makes it even more interesting. Drawing this also made me think that a one-page story is good for focusing more on the overall panel structure, and that the overall composition of the whole page feels more important compared with a longer comic. Okay, one more panel finished. After drawing several small Porkies, here I could draw a close-up and show his expression. No need for several panels because the setting has been established in the first part of the page. We already know he's been walking a long distance and now he's returning to the office. I can see he looks happy. His mission seems to be successful. Let's get now to the fourth point of my how to finish comics list. Know the end before you start. Although making up a story as you go is fun and might seem more creative, if you have trouble finishing projects, you should definitely avoid starting one when you have no idea what your destination is. You need to know what is happening on that very last panel, and you need a good map or you really might get lost in a labyrinth of decisions and possibilities. While you are trying to figure out where you are going, you will forget where you started from, and your story will end up in the unfinished project's hell. So find the ending as soon as the first idea starts to grow on you, and make sure it is a satisfying wrap-up of the story. In this case, I actually started from the last panel, but I don't think you should do that as a rule. Just be able to answer if someone asks you how the story ends. Okay, better not give spoilers. If they want to know, they will have to read it all. One more panel finished. Near the end, I got more confident and wanted to use an interesting angle for this panel. This was the hardest panel to draw. It is a bit ambitious. I had to stop recording while I was sketching it in pencil, because I was making too much of a mess and it distracted me. I did it without a reference image because I want to practice my perspective drawing more. I can do this as I have some experience with drawing in perspective, but if this is too difficult for you, using reference is always a good idea. There are other ways too if you are used to working digitally. Clip Studio, for instance, has perspective grids you can use, or you can use Blender to make very simple 3D models of your scene and get reference for all the angles you need. Try this only if you have used 3D modeling software before, or you'll end up wasting more time with this than just figuring it yourself. The final point on my finish it list is make a daily habit. Sadly, it is a fact that all human determination starts vanishing after a couple of days of not receiving attention, especially when we are working alone on personal projects. The feeling that the thing we are doing is interesting and important enough begins to fade away the moment we step away from it, other things occupying that space and getting priority. When we go back to a project, first we have to work ourselves up to the level of enthusiasm from the last time and jog our memory a lot. There is also a phenomenon of inertia we experience. When we get into the flow, it's hard to stop, but then it's hard to start again. This is the main thing that makes a comic project hard to finish. It is never a one-day job, so you have to deal with all the interruptions. Knowing this, you can find ways to handle it. Making shorter pauses is the first obvious solution. Next day, the project will be fresher in your mind than after 2 days. So setting a daily habit is best. There is a lot of advice around about setting habits, so I will only talk about what I found more important in my personal experience. Having everything prepared in sight on your desk makes it easier to sit down and work. At the end of the work session, make a written note of what you can do the next day. It's better to set a minimum time for the work session than a certain amount of work. That is, I found it better to plan to draw for half an hour than planning to draw a page. If you just set a time and spend it drawing, you will feel you are on track and making progress no matter how much you get done. If you plan to do 1 page daily and you don't succeed, that might feel discouraging. If every day you get up from your desk and feel satisfied with your work, it will be easier for you to pick things up the next day. If one day you don't have the time, try not to drop the habit. Make it an emergency special short thing. Just get to it for 10 quiet minutes, so you don't lose continuity. Ready? This is quite a nice panel. Yes, I think I got these pig ears right. It's not often that I get to draw Porchi from the back. These are the 2 last panels before we get to the final one, and they work together as a sequence. They divide the space occupied by a large panel and are similar in content and angle. We get now to the point in which Porchi opens the box. The big reveal will happen in the last panel, but we start to understand what the surprise might be. The two panels make the reader look over Porchi's shoulder, and, as if curious to see more, the second panel gets us closer. Only the image cuts the bottom part of Porchi's face. We'll have to wait a little bit more. I'm not using any template when drawing circles either. Maybe I should. Note: Porchi looking in the mirror was a fun detail to draw. While I was editing this video, I looked at my drawing so much that I began to have some doubts about the story, wondering how many people will actually get the joke. Is Agatha Christie's detective still a common reference these days? I am a detective stories fan and my family understood the joke easily, but I didn't get to test it on many people, so I would like to know if it was clear to you. Please leave a comment if Hercule Porco made you giggle a bit. The next project on my unfinished stack is a 4-page Porchi comic, suitable for a children's comics magazine. I already have the idea outlined, I know how the story ends, and I have made a bunch of sketches, so I'll just have to apply my daily habit advice and stick to it. And for my next video, I am preparing a walkthrough of the second Pigtown adventure, featuring myself, Porchi, and the fun cast of our cartoon friends. It is called The Poisonous Ink Blabber. This is one of the stories I created during Inktober, following along the daily prompts, and you can watch the first one called The Underwater Show, clicking on the link at the end of this video. I kept promising my friends to go on with the series, so I am working on it now. If you subscribe to this channel, it will be easier to meet again for a new story, a draw along and a chat. And I would love to know if my 5 points list was of any help to you. And we're done. Let's see how everything comes together.
Yes, I finished. Thank you for staying here. And if you want to know more about Porchi, you can watch this video somewhere around here.